It was a Thursday morning, quiet and cool, when I noticed her for the first time. She stood at the edge of my property line, holding a pie in her hands. She hadn't baked it herself, that much was clear. The sun was still hiding behind the ridge, painting the sky in soft colors. Her name was Karen Charais. She was the president of the Fox Trail Oaks Homeowners Association, HOA for short. To me, she didn't look like a leader of a friendly neighborhood group. She looked more like the CEO of passive aggression, dressed in a pastel cardigan, full of judgment and pretending to be polite. I was busy tightening a loose wooden board on my deck railing when she called out to me, loud and cheerful, as if we were old friends. "Good morning, Zachary," she said. "No one calls me Zachary, not anymore. Only my mother did, and she passed away 5 years ago." I wiped the sawdust from my hands onto my jeans and walked closer to the fence line. I nodded politely, keeping my guard up. "I thought I'd come over and welcome you again," she continued. "I know you've been here for a while, but community is everything, don't you think?" She held out the pie with a big smile. I took it from her. The crust looked store-bought, and the blueberry filling looked a little too glossy, as if it were hiding something. It was still warm, but not fresh. Probably microwaved in her car before she walked over. "Thanks," I said quickly, already trying to retreat back to my work. But she didn't leave. "We've been talking in the committee," she added. "Well, I've been talking, and we'd love to see you join our beautification initiative. To keep the neighborhood cohesive, a united look for everyone." I glanced around. My house sat on more than 4 acres of land, with no other homes touching my property. The only connection to the neighborhood was a narrow service road and the HOA's security gate about 300 feet away. My land wasn't just private, it was legally outside the HOA's authority. "I appreciate the offer," I said calmly, "but I'm not part of the HOA." Her smile didn't fade, but her eyes sharpened, like a cobra before a strike. "Technically, no," she replied, "but community spirit doesn't have borders, does it?" That was her first visit. It wasn't the last. She began coming by more often. Sometimes she brought cookies, other times flyers for neighborhood events. Every time I declined politely. Then her visits grew stranger. She started dropping subtle hints about me, compliments on my strong masculine energy, questions about whether I had a girlfriend or wife. Eye contact that lasted too long. It made me uncomfortable, so I tried to keep my distance. But Karen didn't understand distance. She started showing up uninvited. Once, she knocked on my back door saying she was worried about a tree branch she saw from the road. Another time, she appeared after 9 p.m., claiming she smelled gas coming from my property. My home doesn't even use gas. I run everything on solar and propane. Then came the robe incident. It was a Saturday morning. I had just finished a video call with a client in Arizona. I walked into my kitchen and froze. I heard footsteps inside my house. At first, I thought it was an animal. Raccoons sometimes tried to get into my basement pantry. But no, this was human. And then I saw her. Karen walked in through my mudroom door like it was her own house. She was wearing a fluffy white bathrobe. Bare legs, bare feet, and most offensively, no bra. In her hands, she carried a bottle of Chardonnay and 2 glasses. "Oh," she said, pretending to be surprised. "I thought I heard a leak from your outside tap. Just wanted to make sure everything was fine." She wasn't fooling anyone. I didn't answer. I went straight to the control panel near the fridge and pressed the emergency record button. My security system was always running, but this time I made sure every second was saved. "Karen," I said firmly, stepping between her and the hallway, "you need to leave right now." She pouted, actually pouted. "I just thought maybe we could talk, get to know each other. You've been so distant." She stepped closer. I didn't move. "Leave or I'll call the sheriff. Your name, your robe, your wine, it's all going in the report. And you just walked into a home that isn't yours." Her face cracked for a second, just a flicker, but I saw it. Then, silently, she turned around and walked out barefoot, wobbling down my steps with the bottle still in her hand. I stood there breathing hard. Then I saved the footage in 3 places: cloud, local drive, and an encrypted external hard drive. The next morning, I filed a police report. On Monday, I filed a civil suit: harassment, trespassing, attempted coercion. Every visit, every word, every picture, I had it all documented. I expected retaliation. I just didn't expect it to come so fast. 3 days later, I stepped outside to check my mail. Something felt wrong. My address sign was gone. It was an old iron plate with hand-carved numbers. Now it was missing completely. No screws, no broken wood, no mess. Just gone, as if someone had carefully removed it to erase my name from the street. The next day, I replaced it with a new sign, this time bolted directly into the wooden post. I also installed a small motion sensor above it, set to record anyone who came near. And it was a good thing I did. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of a metallic crash outside. My heart pounded as I grabbed a tactical flashlight from my nightstand and shined it across the yard. Nothing moved. Silence. But in the morning, I found the damage. My mailbox had been punctured with small drill holes, evenly spaced. The lock was gone. The flag snapped off. It looked like someone had tried to install surveillance equipment inside it, then changed their mind halfway through. The police came, took photos, and filed a report. The deputy shrugged. "Looks like bored teenagers," he said. But I knew. It wasn't teenagers. It was the HOA. And this was just the beginning. 2 days after the mailbox was destroyed, I was upstairs at my desk. I was working on plans for a new energy-efficient cabin design when I heard something strange outside. It was the low buzz of power tools, the whine of a circular saw, the sharp crack of an impact driver. For a moment, I thought maybe one of my contractors had shown up unannounced, but no one was scheduled to work on my property. I stepped out onto the balcony and froze. 4 men in bright orange HOA vests were down near the southern fence line. They were already tearing down sections of my fence, the oldest part of the barrier, made from cedar wood I had carefully restored myself. 2 full panels were already lying on the ground. I stormed outside barefoot, shouting before I even reached them. "Hey, stop what you're doing right now." One of the men looked up. His expression said everything. He wasn't expecting anyone to notice. "We're with the HOA," he said flatly. "This fence violates visual corridor regulations." "There are no HOA regulations here," I snapped. "This is my property. You have no authority here." He shrugged and held up a clipboard. "Your structure blocks a designated scenic viewing axis. Article 6, Section 11 of our bylaws." I nearly laughed. "That doesn't apply to me. I am not in your HOA. This is my land. Get out." Still, they didn't stop. I pulled out my phone and called the sheriff's department. The same deputy from before showed up. He walked around, hands on his belt, listening to my explanation with the enthusiasm of someone stuck at the DMV. The HOA workers stood nearby, tools in hand, waiting for his verdict. "Well," the deputy said slowly, "this looks like an administrative boundary dispute, not really a criminal matter." "Not a criminal matter," I shouted. "They're on my land tearing down my fence. That's vandalism." "Do you have your plat map?" he asked. I did. I keep it in a folder in my hall closet. I brought it out, spread it across the hood of his cruiser, and pointed at the lines. "This," I said firmly, tracing the border, "is the HOA boundary, and this, everything here, is mine, fully deeded, legally surveyed, and outside their authority." The deputy squinted at the map, sighed, and finally told the workers to stop, just to avoid conflict. No citations, no arrests, nothing. The men packed up their tools, but as they walked away, one of them muttered under his breath, You're going to wish you just played along, man. I didn't reply. I just turned back inside, locked the door, and sat at my kitchen table. Then I created a new folder on my laptop. Evidence post-harassment escalation. Inside I stored photos of the missing address sign, video of the mailbox tampering, footage of the unauthorized fence demolition, audio recordings of the HOA workers admitting they were contracted, a copy of my plat map marked clearly with boundaries. I also added a voice memo. I don't think they're done, and I don't think they understand what they're starting. And I was right. That Thursday, I left for Chicago to attend a 3-day conference on green architecture. I gave a talk, met some colleagues, and even had one too many drinks with a German urban planner. Before leaving, I reminded my grandfather, Grayson Whitlock, that he was free to use the house while I was gone. Grayson was no ordinary 81-year-old. He was a retired Navy officer, sharp as a harpoon, and tougher than most men half his age. He'd brought 3 of his old military buddies with him, Marshall, Joe, and Tom. Their plan was simple: do a little yard work, clean the gutters, and spend the weekend telling war stories around the fire pit. I left them stocked with groceries, beer, and emergency contacts. What I didn't leave them with was a warning about Karen and the HOA. According to Grayson, it happened the very next night. It was around 11:45 p.m. The men were relaxing on the porch. Grayson was drinking coffee, watching an old Columbo episode on his iPad. Then he heard something, the low growl of a diesel engine and the crunch of tires on gravel. A white utility truck pulled up outside the main gate. The lock had been cut clean through. 4 men jumped out. They wore plain work clothes, but one had an HOA vest. 2 carried tool kits. Another had bolt cutters. They walked straight toward my workshop. Grayson didn't panic. He simply signaled to his friends. In seconds, they were operating like it was the old days. Grayson grabbed the shotgun from behind the front door. Marshall, who apparently always traveled with a compound bow, slipped out the side entrance. Joe launched a drone from the upstairs loft to capture aerial footage. Tom activated a camcorder they had set up earlier to document home repairs. Luckily, it had night vision. The intruders had no idea what they had just walked into. 4 combat veterans running a surprise security operation. When the men reached the shed and began removing solar panels, the floodlights roared to life, turning night into day. Grayson stepped out with the shotgun, held low but visible. His voice carried the weight of command. "You are trespassing on private property. You have 10 seconds to leave or be detained." One of the intruders laughed. "Who the hell are you, old man?" Grayson pumped the shotgun once, slow and deliberate. Marshall emerged from the shadows with his bow drawn. Joe's drone hovered above, its mechanical hum filling the air. Tom appeared with a floodlight in one hand and the camcorder in the other, recording every face in full detail. "I'd take this seriously if I were you," Grayson said. "You're being filmed and broadcast live to cloud storage, and I've already called the sheriff." The men froze. The one with bolt cutters stammered. "We were just hired to collect material from an HOA storage shed. They told us this was part of the perimeter." From upstairs, Joe used the outdoor speakers to broadcast his voice. "Tell that to the court. Say cheese." One man bolted for the truck. The others hesitated, but the sight of 4 armed veterans was enough to make them retreat. They scrambled back into the utility vehicle. As they drove off, Marshall let an arrow fly. It struck the side panel of the truck, leaving a deep mark, just enough to tag it. The veterans had captured everything: license plates, faces, audio, and a particularly useful clip where one man admitted. "Karen said no one would be here. Just scare the guy if he was." That was the moment everything changed. When I landed back from Chicago on Sunday, my phone was full of missed calls and video files. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the damage was already clear. The gate was bent, hanging by one hinge. Deep tire marks scarred the gravel. The smell of burned plastic hung in the air. The solar panels from my workshop were gone. 2 Adirondack chairs had been thrown into the creek. A shed window was smashed. The weather station wiring was torn out. But alongside the damage, I had evidence. Clear video, audio, drone shots, faces, names. And most importantly, 4 retired soldiers who had just turned my home into a fortress. And they were more than ready for the next round. When I came home from Chicago, I expected to find peace. Instead, I found a battlefield. The gate was half broken. The gravel road was chewed up by heavy tires. My shed looked like it had been attacked with crowbars, and my solar panels, the expensive set I had just installed, were gone. But what they left behind was even more valuable: evidence. On my dining table, Grayson had laid everything out like a military briefing. Photos, drone footage, time-stamped recordings, and written notes. "Sit down," he said as soon as I walked in. His voice was calm, but I could feel the storm behind it. I sat. He pointed to the screen of my laptop. The drone video was playing. It showed the 4 men creeping onto my land, cutting locks, and moving toward the shed. Then, clear as daylight, one of them said, "Karen told us he wouldn't be here. Just scare him if he was." Hearing her name spoken out loud, tied to trespassers on my property, it set something off inside me. That was no longer harassment. That was conspiracy. The next morning, I took everything to the sheriff's office. I expected action, handcuffs, at least a serious investigation. Instead, I got the same shrug. "Looks like a civil matter," the deputy said. "You should file through the courts." "Civil matter?" I snapped. "They destroyed my property, they stole equipment, they broke into my land at night, and I have it all on tape." The deputy leaned back in his chair. "Take it up with your lawyer." That was when I understood. The HOA had influence. Maybe Karen had friends in the county office, or maybe the deputies just didn't want to get involved. Either way, I was on my own. So I stopped waiting for help. I doubled down. Step 1, reinforce the property. Grayson and his friends helped me install motion sensor spotlights around the perimeter. We added infrared cameras, hidden under eaves and inside birdhouses. I set up alarms on both driveways and a backup power bank in case the lines were cut. "Don't fight them in the dark," Grayson advised. "Make the field yours." Step 2, track the HOA's movements. I filed open record requests, pulled meeting notes, and searched property filings. Slowly, a picture formed. Karen and her committee had been planning a community expansion. They wanted to extend HOA authority beyond the current gate, and my land sat right in the way. I wasn't just an inconvenience, I was an obstacle. Step 3, push back legally. I hired a lawyer, one with a reputation for tearing apart HOA abuse cases. We drafted cease and desist letters, filed harassment claims, and requested restraining orders. But the retaliation came faster than the paperwork. The next strike happened during the middle of the night. At 2:14 a.m., the alarms triggered. I pulled up the live feed on my phone. 6 figures in hoodies were moving along the fence line. One carried a crowbar. Another had a gas can. "Not tonight," I muttered. I called Grayson. He and his buddies were still in the guest house. Within 3 minutes, they were geared up and moving. This time, we didn't confront them directly. We let the cameras roll while Marshall tracked them from the woods, silent as a shadow. The intruders tried to pour gasoline on a pile of firewood stacked near the shed. But before they could light it, they heard something: the mechanical whine of Joe's drone rising from the trees. The red light blinked overhead. The men panicked. One swung a crowbar at the drone and missed. Another shouted. Karen said this would be quick. They bolted, leaving the gas can behind. By the time they were gone, I had more evidence. Fingerprints on the can, new footage, and audio of Karen's name being spoken again. The sheriff still did nothing, but my lawyer was grinning ear to ear. "This is gold," he said. "Not just harassment. This is arson attempt, conspiracy, trespass, destruction of property. We're talking multiple felonies. If they think they're going to scare you into joining their HOA, they've just handed us their own noose." But Karen didn't back down. Instead, she changed tactics. It started with letters, official-looking documents, stamped with the HOA seal, demanding fines for noncompliance. One said I owed $2,500 for unauthorized fencing. Another demanded $4,100 for visual obstruction. Then came phone calls, a blocked number that rang at all hours. When I picked up, silence, sometimes faint breathing. And then the flyers. One morning, I stepped outside and found every tree along my driveway plastered with paper. Each one had my name printed on it in bold letters. "Dangerous neighbor, refuses to support community." Some had fake quotes like, "He threatened our families and he's stockpiling weapons." It was pure slander. Neighbors I barely knew began giving me strange looks. One even crossed the street when I walked into town for groceries. Karen was trying to isolate me. But she forgot one thing: I wasn't fighting alone. Grayson called in more reinforcements. 2 more of his old Navy friends showed up, men built like oak trees and just as steady. They treated my property like a base of operations. "Think of this as training," one of them joked, stringing barbed wire along the weakest part of the fence. Meanwhile, my lawyer filed injunctions against Karen personally. Every time she sent a letter, we filed it as harassment. Every time her people trespassed, we added new charges. Slowly, a legal case was building like a snowball rolling downhill. But Karen wasn't done. The next move she made was the boldest yet. It was a sunny afternoon when I heard the roar of machinery. I walked outside and saw a bulldozer crawling toward the far edge of my property. Behind it was a line of pickup trucks, all with HOA logos slapped on the doors. A dozen workers jumped out, carrying stakes, paint, and surveying equipment. They weren't sneaking around anymore. They were coming straight at me, in broad daylight. And from the way they moved, I knew this wasn't another petty scare tactic. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Something that could destroy everything I had built. The rumble of the bulldozer shook the ground beneath my boots. Dust curled into the air as the machine crawled closer, its steel blade pointed toward my field like a weapon. Behind it, 3 HOA pickup trucks lined up along the service road. Workers in reflective vests spilled out, carrying wooden stakes, spray paint, and clipboards. They looked like an invading crew, not neighbors. I grabbed my phone and hit record. "What do you think you're doing?" I shouted. A tall man in sunglasses stepped forward. "We're preparing for expansion. This land is being incorporated into Fox Trail Oaks HOA jurisdiction. Survey S been approved." I laughed bitterly. "Approved by who? Karen, this is private property. You have no authority here." He smirked. "Talk to the committee. We're just doing our job." I pulled up my plat map on the phone screen and held it out. "This is my deed. This land is mine. Get off it now." They ignored me. The bulldozer roared louder as the operator revved the engine. That's when Grayson and his crew appeared. 6 men, all in their 70s and 80s, but every one of them carried themselves like soldiers stepping onto a battlefield. They weren't armed with rifles this time, at least not visibly, but their presence alone stopped the workers cold. Grayson raised his voice, steady and sharp. "This is trespass. You are on private property without consent. Leave or you'll be detained until law enforcement arrives." The workers hesitated. The bulldozer idled. Then from the lead truck, Karen herself stepped out. She was dressed in her usual pastel cardigan, oversized sunglasses hiding her eyes. She smiled as if this were all a neighborhood barbecue. "Zachary," she said sweetly, "we're only trying to bring order. Your land sticks out like a sore thumb. Everyone else complies. Why can't you?" "Because I don't belong to you," I snapped. "This isn't your kingdom, it's my home." Her smile never wavered. "Community matters more than individual ego. You can't wall yourself off forever. We will unify this neighborhood, one way or another." Grayson stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. "Ma'am, I suggest you back away. You're walking straight into federal charges." Karen tilted her head. "Federal, this is local jurisdiction." "No," Grayson replied. "Interstate conspiracy, trespassing with intent, property destruction across state-funded utilities. We've already contacted the Department of Justice. You think this is just a neighborhood spat? You're playing in a league you don't understand." The color drained slightly from Karen's face, but she covered it with another forced smile. "You can't scare me with empty threats." Grayson didn't blink. "We're not threatening, we're documenting, and we have every second of this on camera." Right on cue, Joe's drone buzzed into view, hovering above the bulldozer, its camera blinking red. The workers muttered among themselves. The bulldozer operator shut off the engine. Nobody wanted to be the one caught on film crossing the line. Finally, Karen turned sharply. "Pack it up," she snapped. "We'll handle this in court." The trucks pulled back slowly. The bulldozer reversed down the service road. Dust settled over the field like smoke after a battle. When the last engine faded, silence returned. But it wasn't peace. We all knew this was just round one. That night, we gathered in the living room. Grayson poured coffee for everyone while I spread out documents across the table. "We can't just play defense forever," I said. "Every week they push harder. Next time it won't just be property damage, it'll be worse." Marshall tapped the table. "We hit back legally. Harder, faster, injunctions, restraining orders, federal filings. You've got enough evidence to sink them." "And what if the sheriff still won't act?" I asked. "Then we go above him," Joe said. "State attorney general, federal prosecutors, media if we have to." Tom chuckled. "Karen wants power. Nothing destroys tyrants faster than a spotlight." We made a plan. I would compile all video, audio, and written evidence into a master file. Grayson would contact a retired JAG officer he knew from his Navy days. My lawyer would file emergency injunctions to freeze HOA funds until the case was heard. And the veterans would continue running surveillance, ensuring that every trespass, every attempt was caught in crystal clear detail. 2 days later, retaliation arrived. At 3:00 a.m., every light in my house flickered out. Total blackout. The solar backup should have kicked in, but the line was cut clean. We moved fast. Marshall threw on night vision goggles. Joe launched the drone again. Grayson grabbed the shotgun. On the infrared feed, we saw them. 3 figures moving along the northern fence, crouched low, carrying wire cutters. They had tried to cut power, maybe to disable cameras. What they didn't know was that half the system ran on a separate hidden generator Grayson, and I had installed behind the shed. So while they crept closer, thinking they were invisible, we filmed every step. When the floodlights blazed on again, the men froze like deer in headlights. "Smile," Joe's voice boomed from the loudspeaker. "You're on 4 cameras and 3 live streams." They ran, one tripped over the fence, scrambling into the woods. Another dropped a crowbar in panic. We didn't chase, we didn't have to. The footage was better than any confrontation. The next morning, we delivered the new evidence to my lawyer. He nearly jumped out of his chair. "This is it," he said. "They can't spin this anymore. Coordinated sabotage, attempted arson, unlawful surveillance, vandalism. You've got them dead to rights." But Karen wasn't finished. Later that week, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Inside was a lawsuit, the HOA suing me for damaging community value and creating unsafe conditions. It was laughable, but also dangerous. If she could drag me into endless court battles, drain my money with legal fees, maybe she thought I would finally surrender. She was wrong. Because with Grayson and his men, I wasn't just one person anymore. I was part of a unit. And together, we were ready for the final fight. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for Friday evening. Usually, it was just Karen and a handful of obedient board members. But this time, we decided to attend. We didn't walk in quietly. We arrived as a group, me, Grayson, Marshall, Joe, Tom, and my lawyer. Karen's smile faltered when she saw us. The room was full of residents, sipping coffee and shuffling papers. Most had no idea about the midnight break-ins or the sabotage. They only knew Karen's version of the story, that I was a dangerous loner who refused to cooperate. But now, the truth was about to come out. Because we weren't just here to argue. We had the evidence, and we were ready to show the whole community exactly who Karen really was. The community hall smelled like coffee and old carpet. Folding chairs lined the room, and a projector screen glowed at the front with the HOA logo. Fox Trail Oaks, building unity together. Karen stood near the podium, dressed like she was hosting a church bake sale. Her pastel sweater matched the bright smile on her face. To the residents, she looked calm, friendly, and in control. But when she saw us walk in, me, Grayson, his crew of veterans, and my lawyer, her smile cracked for half a second. We sat in the second row. The room buzzed with whispers. Karen tapped the microphone. Let's get started. Tonight, we'll address ongoing concerns about community safety, property values, and non-compliant residents. Her eyes flicked toward me when she said the last part. I didn't flinch. She cleared her throat. As you all know, certain individuals have refused to cooperate with neighborhood standards. This behavior damages our unity and lowers our property values. Stop right there, my lawyer interrupted, standing up. His voice was sharp, professional. Before you continue, my client would like to share something with the community. Karen frowned. This is not on the agenda. Neither was trespassing, vandalism, and attempted arson, my lawyer shot back. But here we are. The room went silent. Grayson stood and walked to the projector. He connected a laptop and opened a folder labeled HOA Harassment Evidence. Let's start with this, he said. On the screen, the first video played. The intruders sneaking onto my land, cutting locks, carrying tools. Clear faces, clear audio. Someone in the crowd gasped. Next clip, the men drilling holes in my mailbox. Another gasp. Then came the drone footage. The night Karen's hired crew tried to pour gasoline by the shed. The audio was unmistakable. Karen said this would be quick. The room erupted in whispers. Karen's face turned pale. That's taken out of context, she stammered. Grayson ignored her. He played more. The bulldozer standoff, with Karen herself leading the charge. The flyers slandering my name, photographed and dated. The phone call recordings with heavy breathing in the background. Finally, the footage of Karen herself, stepping into my house in nothing but a robe carrying wine. The room went dead silent. Karen's mask broke. This is illegal surveillance. He's twisting everything. My lawyer stepped forward. Every clip was recorded legally on private property with time-stamped backups. This is not just harassment. This is a criminal conspiracy led by your HOA president. Karen's allies on the board looked nervous. One man tugged at his collar. Another whispered, she told us it was just code enforcement. Then came the final blow. Grayson pulled out a printed letter. This, he said, holding it up, is the federal injunction we filed this morning. Effective immediately, Fox Trail Oaks HOA is under investigation for fraud, harassment, and misuse of funds. All activities are frozen until further notice. The room exploded. Some residents cheered. Others shouted questions. A few stormed out, angry at Karen for dragging them into this mess. Karen tried to speak, but no one listened. Her voice was drowned out by the chaos. She slammed her papers on the podium and marched out, her heels clicking like gunshots on the tile floor. That was the last time I saw her in charge. The aftermath wasn't quick. There were months of court hearings, depositions, and filings, but the evidence was too strong. Karen and several of her closest board members faced charges for trespassing, conspiracy, and attempted arson. The HOA itself nearly collapsed. Without Karen's iron grip, residents began voting to scale it back, returning power to the community instead of one person. As for me, the court declared my land completely independent. No HOA jurisdiction, no fines, no harassment. Freedom written in ink. Life slowly returned to normal. The veterans went back to their own lives, though Grayson still visits often. He likes to sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise over the ridge. "You handled it well," he told me one morning. "Most folks would have caved, but you stood your ground." "I had help," I admitted. He smiled. "That's what family's for." The fence was rebuilt stronger than before. The mailbox was repaired, this time reinforced with steel. My solar panels were replaced with an even bigger system, fully insured. And the cameras, they're still up. Not because I expect trouble anymore, but because I learned a lesson. Evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from across the street, dressed in a cardigan and a fake smile. One evening, months later, I was at the town cafe when a neighbor approached me. "You know," he said awkwardly, "we believed Karen at first. We thought you were the problem. But after seeing what really happened, well, I just wanted to say thank you. You exposed her." I nodded. I didn't do it for revenge. I just wanted peace. He smiled faintly. "Well, now we all have it." And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. Now when I sit on my porch at night, the woods are quiet again. No engines, no drills, no trespassers, just crickets, the soft hum of the creek, and the steady glow of my porch light. Karen's shadow is gone. And this land, my land, finally feels like home again.